Hello, Active Sage here on the Sage channel. It is Sleep, Art, Game, and Eat, and a wonderful new update came out today that added solar panels, something we very much wanted. But before I go and show you those, they did something else. So here we are in our Create a New World thing. We still got our worlds from before, but if you look here at the survival options, we now have specific settings for inventory size, assembler efficiency, and refinery speed. So you can change those depending on what you like, and of course go into creative and enable copy paste if you like. So anyway, that's the only real thing that's changed here. Everything else is much the same as before. I don't believe there's actually anything new there besides those three options, which actually are pretty dang cool. So anyway, really quickly, let me load up my creative world with our solar panels. Alrighty, so here we are in a world with 1,000,001 solar panels and other random machines scattered about for what all was in this update. Now, this big thing here is basically a solar power farm, and well, its function right now doesn't have much, but if you were to build a big solar panel farm, you would of course connect it to your large manufacturing station, and inside here, whatever your station looks like, you'd have your refinery, respawn point, and all this stuff, and that many arrays out there should be able to power everything. And actually that many arrays, if we were to hop in here, you can see it's generating 414 kilowatts, a fair amount of energy, but not quite as much as, well, a few other things I'll show in a second. Now, each solar panel itself, for a large station like that is, if we come over here, is actually generating around 2.04 kilowatts at maximum. Right now, this one isn't actually generating that much. It's generating nothing because nothing's pulling it. Now, you can increase that very simply if you were to rotate this and aim it more directly at the sun, all the way up to probably around 4, maybe even closer to 5. Now, this one, of course, is at an angle. If I was really smart when I built the station, I would have rotated it a bit more to face directly. Same with those, because those are actually only up to 3 power bars. And what I mean by power bars is the lights on the bottom I was sort of hinting at. The more of those you got, the more power you got output. Anyway, if we were to come over to this is just a small reactor for comparison. If we were to hop in here, you can see a small reactor instantly blows even all of those over there out of the water because it's creating 5 megawatts. Fair bit more energy. And I personally believe these could use a little buff. Another thing I believe we could use is a battery pack, actually. That way, let's say you have a big solar farm like this, maybe even something bigger, let's say something like this that just happens to be connected together, and a large ship flies up here and decides it wants to dock and recharge. It hooks in and drains the power that this is outputting from, well, the solar panels into its large battery supply, and then it can buzz about on that battery supply for a while instead of having to have this many solar panels on itself. Now, another thing you'd probably notice is right here, is one solar panel enough to keep you alive? Well, yes indeed it is. As you can see here, I take a tumble, boop, and I respawn at it. No trouble at all. And actually, if we look here on the control panel, you can see it's a 9.82% power usage. So you can very easily run a medical room from a single solar panel, which means maybe we'll see an end to those big yellow ships randomly appearing every time you die and respawn. There'll just be one of these maybe set up whenever you join a game, or maybe even a smaller ship than the big yellow one. Anyway, let's fly back over here now to this, and can a solar panel power up? Well, a nice little refinery, or assembler, pardon. Well, yes it can. It can power it up. It's at 49% power usage, but it is online. Now, unfortunately, I don't believe it can actually make anything. So let's really quickly grab ourselves some iron, hop into our assembler, which actually does have a new UI here. So you see, now when you mouse over stuff, it shows up in red very clearly. Even the icons themselves are red, to show you don't have what it takes. It shows you what's needed. You can see here it's saying, hey, you need all this, and actually when mouse over it says not enough power. So even before I put the iron in, you can see it's saying not enough power. So let's plop the iron in. It says these have gone blue because we have what we need. If we tell it to build them, it shuts down, not enough power. And actually, I believe if we hop in here, yeah, it shows it actually needs 557.96 kilowatts, which means all those solar cells or solar panels over there would probably not even power this. It'd get close. So they really need to up the amount of power those solar panels can put out, because, I mean, I'm all for having a huge farm, but I get the feeling if I have to keep going with these, 3, 4, 5 of these large arrays just to power, a few refineries, the game itself might not be able to handle that too much. And I know they weren't too keen on solar panels, but come on, if you're trying to keep it as close as the current day, we're going to need solar panels because we use a lot of those in space right now. Anyway, here we go, a refinery, much the same as what we were just using over there. If we were to grab some uranium and try to refine it, it will not refine at all, actually. So we'll hop on here. You can see it's using up 49% power, which is the same as what the assembler was actually using it before we put anything in it, which is an awful lot actually to use up while idle. We stick this in there, The sound completely cuts out because if we were to hop on here, we're having power usage overload again. Not enough power. Very unfortunate. Anyway, let's carry on back to these little ships up here, just to demonstrate how many solar panels you need to get all around, basically. So here we go. These are, that's a lot of solar panels for a tiny little ship, and still it's barely able to move. And there you go, had a little impact there. By the way, these solar panels do have multiple build stages, but they do not currently deform at all in any stage. So as far as I can tell, at least. They just sort of, disappear with a little of smoke. But yeah, here you can see the ship is coasting along, having a lot of trouble keeping, it all facing the sun. And of course, that's very troublesome if you decide, hey, I want to fly towards the sun. Forward. Sideways, you'd be able to fly pretty fine. By the way, you can also see a nice pattern over there on the main power station from these. Sort of interesting. I think it might be a bit glitchy. Anyway, this is a great point to actually demonstrate the 4 little lights there. As I turn it away from the sun, you'll see those drop down very quickly, down to 1. And you can also see my power levels on the reactor at the bottom right there going up and down as I move towards and away from the sun as such. Very, very interesting. Another thing I noticed with this, which I actually don't think was in the last updates, maybe it was, I just didn't notice it, but if you actually look at the engines when I'm firing, of course we're in the red right now, I'm trying to go up, and you see the engines just barely firing, and the more I move, the more power goes to those engines. You can actually see their flames pick up. Ooh, sun got blocked out. Blocking our view there, but there you go, you can see full flames sticking out of there. Very, very cool. I didn't notice that before, where the flames are actually longer and more powerful depending on more power you get. Very, very cool. Didn't notice that. Speaking of flames, by the way, if we were to fly down here to this large setup here, I have, well, this is basically to show, oh, it's actually a bit crooked too, but this is basically to show what happens now when you fire an engine at a metal wall. And you can see I've basically set up every sort of scenario that you might find yourself in. We got our thruster up 1 block off, your thruster right on, another thruster, a big one right on it, 1 block, and then 2 blocks. And I'll just hop in here and hit space. You can see what happens. Also, I have these here to demonstrate that you can indeed damage your own ship with these. So hop in there, turn our camera, and hold space. And we don't actually have enough power to power them, so those little tiny flames are shooting out and they're not actually going to damage it. So let's really quickly stick a few more reactors in here. We're in creative mode, so we don't actually need to put uranium in these. That should be more than enough power now, so let's hop back in there. Again, rotate our view and give it a space. And there you go, and you hear that thudding sound. I believe that's the landing gear trying to break free. And you can see the flames are successfully melting through everything. And actually, we're still not getting enough power, but enough to see that even this one, at not max power, is reaching all the way down there and melting it. So you gotta be super careful now with these. And it's gonna wreck a lot of my ships, but I knew this was coming, so I'm actually kind of alright with that. I still wish there was a way to have a weird propulsion drive inside your ship, but I don't know, I guess it's up to me now to just figure that out. And there you go, as you can see at the far right there, it even indented into that one, even at a far range. And the ones that are closest actually almost do the least damage because their flame just goes right through a small hole. Anyway, now I'm going to go down. You'll see the top part there deform as I go down. There you go, really quickly burnt through that. Whew. Does some stuff. Also, I have been guilty of putting engines behind engines before, and I actually didn't feel this was too cheaty. I always actually felt that this was sort of acceptable because on some ships you might want to have humongous but thin engines, and I'm hoping that someday in the future they'll make it so that if you do this, they sort of merge into one big engine, or that you'll be able to build huger engines that sort of coupling together. But really quickly, let me give this ship a little bit more power, and you can see that, well, they clearly didn't agree with me, that engines behind engines should be acceptable, or if they did, they haven't gotten around to making it work with the normal damage from these engines yet, because if we start going up, I just tapped it once, it instantly destroys those other engines. So yeah, so much for that too on a lot of my ships. I really don't want to have 1,000,000,001 engines just in a big array on the back though, so I'm either going to have to figure out a new way of setting that up, or, well, wait until I mod in some of my own bigger engines, or they decide to give us modular engines that can sort of fit together and make super powerful straight line speed things, which I have a decent amount of hope that they actually will. I think that's about it. The only other thing I got to cover is the fact that you can indeed, if we pull up our paint palette here, we'll choose a bit of yellow, you can indeed paint these solar panels. And they won't actually paint the large glass or solar panel bit, but they'll paint the edges here, which actually makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't expect the glass bits to be painted, and you can paint them any color you like as per usual, which is pretty awesome. Even though it looks like they don't really have final textures on them. You can at least paint them, which is pretty cool. Which makes me think that maybe one day we'll even be able to paint our engines and such things. Anyway, I think that's about it. Thank you a bunch for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.